Some of you guys are concerning when you say perfect timing, and I'm doing a live stream in the middle of the day on a Friday. Some of you worry me sometimes. As you just woke up, my guy, for me, it's like almost 12:30. What are you doing? You have a late night out or something? Hi, Crab. How are you? Hi, PK. Again, perfect timing. Interesting. Interesting. Oh, okay. You work overnights. That's fair, Maz. That's fine. That's fine then. I'm glad you got your sleep in, your beauty sleep. Uh, Hi, JC. And yes, yes, sometimes we have to disrupt your work. Of course, we must. We're going to be talking about the Wildlings. So there's that. I wanted to do a follow up stream kind of to Monday's stream or Tuesday's stream, sorry. And that stream wasn't very good. I hope this stream is better. I don't think we're having any issues as of right now. I did a little test yesterday. It was a little tease for some of you guys that were in there. We're going to talk about the Wildlings. There are a number of different factions of Wildlings still left, but they might very quickly be gone. We have some very ominous stuff about places like Hardhome, and there's also a group of Wildlings around the Shadow Tower. So yeah. A JC, like that's not even a question though. Like which wildling is the hottest? It's obviously Val. So yeah. Hi Cannibal, how are you? Also hi Crab. For me, it's like already nighttime. Wow. Well, you definitely are not from America then, PK. You must definitely be somewhere maybe in Europe or something like that. Was Mother Mole at Hardhome or someplace else? Yes. So the last remnants of wildlings that we have, there's basically three. So one of them was with Torment, and they come back and they come past the wall, and there's that wildling faction right now that is south of the wall. I guess there's two technically factions. You have the faction that passed through the wall when Stannis was there. Now you have Jon's faction, which they passed through the wall recently in a Dance with Dragons. Those are two. You have a third faction that's over at the Shadow Tower. They're trying to kind of pass through the mountains and stuff like that and get through the wall there. And you have a fourth, which is at Hardhome, because they believed or they got a vision, which seemed to be correct from Mother Mole, that there were going to be ships that would carry them south. That's run into a lot of issues. So we're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to talk about Hardhome in this video, talk about the fate, or not video, stream. We're going to talk about the fate of the Wildlings towards the end of the series. What will their eventual fate be like? All of that. So there's a lot to kind of handle. Midnight to 8. Oh my, Maz. Oh my. You need to go back to sleep. You're only on like what? 3 hours of sleep, maybe? 3 or 4 hours of sleep? It wasn't even a joke when I said the wildlings will follow Daenerys. I think to a degree they will follow Daenerys, yes. I think Daenerys will be very heavily needed to fight the war against the others, and the wildlings will really, I think they will follow that even more than a lot of other people because they will recognize her need of fighting the others. They were the most impacted by the others. So I think that, yeah, I think they will respect Daenerys quite a lot. I could see definitely factions that are more for her than others. I don't think it'll be like the show where it's like, oh, all the wildlings are completely behind Jon. Daenerys is just like, oh, Jon's hooking up with her, so I guess we support her. Like a lot of the wildlings are they're trying to convert them more or less to R'hllor. That's what Selyse and her people are doing. And saw this, for instance, with Alice Karstark's wedding to Sigorn, who's kind of the leader of the Fens right now. So, yeah, there's a lot of different moving parts with the wildlings going on that the show kind of missed. The show boiled down the wildlings to, especially after post Mance, to Torment. It's just not that simple in the books, which goes for most everything in the books. There's just a lot of different leaders, there's a lot of different factions, a lot of different motivations, a lot of things going on for sure. I don't know, Crab Feeder. Egret is described as like pretty, I guess, or cute maybe. But she's not described like how Val is described. Val is described as being basically like a goddess. That's all I'll say. Do you think Daenerys is going to be more of a champion for the wildlings than resurrected Jon will? Ooh, that's an interesting one, Joe. So I think personally that's a tough question because will Jon back the wildlings more now or less? I think he backs them more because you think about the Wildlings were willing to support him to go and fight Ramsay and all that stuff, and the Night's Watch are the people that betrayed him. So I think Jon will almost double down on his support for the Wildling. I thought the one thing that the show did that was solid with Jon's character was Jon was somebody that made sense for him to go north of the Wall to escape issues of Westeros, all the pain that it's caused him, and live out in kind of like a exile, but more of like a free folk, what the life he always wanted with Eagle type situation. And so I think that the issue becomes you have two real people that I think will be viewed as almost higher beings. Jon coming back from the dead will have a very big impact, I think, on the wildlings, also people that are supporters of R'hllor. And so I think that people will almost blindly follow Jon because of him almost being viewed as how the Targaryens are as higher beings, right? Why was he brought back to life? That's something unheard of. So that's another part of it is I think that there will be a lot of wildlings that will follow Jon because one, Jon has been the person advocating for them more than anyone. He died for them. Like think about actually like ideas of Jon. Jon in a lot of ways would be kind of how a lot of religion looks at character of Jesus, that he died, for them and things like that. The same thing as the idea with Jon. Jon died for the wildlings more or less. There's just a lot of reasons to believe the wildlings are going to be very loyal and will rally behind Jon quite a lot. Like I would even say more so than in the show. And so you have that aspect of it. And then you have this idea that also Jon has been somebody that is uniting, say, Tigorn and the Karstarks, right, with Alice. So there's just a lot there with Jon that makes it really compelling. When then you go to Daenerys. Daenerys is somebody that has brought dragons back into the world. She's been somebody that's been all about the people that are being treated unjustly, like slavery, and she tries to help women and things like that. Like, so I think that the wildlings will both like Daenerys and Jon because they are two people trying to help the wild. I think that Daenerys, again, she's somebody that's been through all different types of culture, Dothraki, now with the Marinese culture, going through all these other different ideas. I think that it will make a lot of sense for the people of the wildlings to support not only Jon, I think they'll support him more, but also support Daenerys as well. I get short bursts of sleep throughout the day, 2 to 3 hours when I get home and in the evening before going to work. Interesting, Matt. I train myself to run off of goblin energy. We love to see that, Maz. I don't know, I don't know if I could do that, but no, I respect it. So PK, the only thing I'll say with that idea is I don't think we have enough time for Daenerys to like go conquering the lands of always winter and establishing a new society for the wildlings. I just don't think that we have time for that. Grab you're a redhead. We love to see that. Danny's plot from book to show is the most different of any adapted A Song of Ice and Fire plot. So let's go off. That's an interesting idea. Of the main like characters, is hers the most different? Um, like that come to mind. I actually would agree with that. Like, because her book arc of book one is similar, but it's still better in the book. There's a lot more that goes on there. I think the changes don't necessarily help Daenerys in the show. Book two and show two are very very different as well. So yeah, I mean, like I think I would agree with that in terms of the mains like characters from the beginning. But if you also want to look at plot points, like again, her plot's almost vastly different. The young Griff plot isn't even adapted, so I don't know. It's an interesting idea. I think Jon becoming undead will be a setup for him traveling beyond the wall, especially if he's a zombie version of himself. He won't feel cold or need food. So, Maz, my idea, and this is my idea I always have with the idea of Jon going north of the wall or any of those things, is like, when do we see that? When do we have the time for Jon to go north of the wall? Is that going to be after the other threat is dealt with, do you think? Or do you think that that's going to be, during Winds of Winter? Or like, I think it makes a lot of sense for me for Jon to go north of the wall after the series like ends, basically. What do you think of the idea that the blue flower growing from a crack in the wall, being a sign of Jon being the Night King and bringing down the wall, could make sense for him to ride a dragon? So, Lulu, I haven't never ever really interpreted it as that. I've always interpreted what I believe you're thinking about is the House of the Undying stuff. That flower is what I've always kind of thought of as being a representation of Jon being Lyanna's son, because the flower that's described, something that Ned constantly is a using as a descriptor, that flower for Lyanna, when he dreams about her death, he dreams about her being in like a bed of those flowers. So I always represent that more as Jon is Rhaegar and Lyanna's son. But could he become a character like the Night King? He may be half dead, more or less. He could be fire white when he comes back. And so how would that go with being the Night's King, or this idea that maybe he makes a pact with the others if he cannot beat them? But I don't think John's gonna be the person to bring down the wall. But I do think he could get a dragon. Greece, the thing is, Jon and Daenerys really are heavily built up to be an endgame romance. See, I disagree with that. There is no indication that Jon and Daenerys are going to hook up. I think that more comes from the show, but like the two haven't even met each other yet. There's no real evidence to suggest that they are going to get together, even though I think it's very possible. I have not read the Red Rising book series, PK. I agree, PK. I think the show didn't really understand Daenerys all that much in terms of what was going on in the book. But why the crack in the wall, though? That seems very important. Could be the idea that maybe Jon is the person that finds the Horn of Winter, which will be the thing that cracks the wall. Remember, he finds the horn, giving it to Sam, and now Sam seems like he has it again. This is all assuming that the horn he found is the Horn of Winter, which I believe it is. That could be the thing that breaks down the wall. So it could be foreshadowing to Jon finding the item that brings it down. But again, I think you have a strong idea. Like, why is there a crack in the wall? I think Daenerys will die. I agree. I think Daenerys will die by the end of the series. Again, I've talked about this. I think that the dragons, the Targaryens, will not be on the throne. I also think the "What is life" speech from Miriam Mazdur is a great scene in the book and the show. But yeah, so let's talk about it. So let's break it down. Let's talk about Hardhome first. So Hardhome is interesting because we get this vision from Melisandre where it seems to be almost showing us what happened in the show. Where in the show, Jon goes to Hardhome trying to get the Wildlings to come and come south and flee. And what we end up seeing with this Mel vision, it would heavily imply Hardhome based on the descriptors that are being used. It seems like she sees them being completely annihilated by the others, all of that. This would also make sense given the reports that are being sent out from Hardhome. Apparently, there are whites in the forest and in the trees near Hardhome. There's dead things in the water. It's a desperate situation where people are even asking Jon for help to come by land, save them. Now, if you guys do not know where Hardhome is and where Castle Black is, so Castle Black is the central point of the wall. And Hardhome is not very close to Castle Black at all. It is on the far eastern side. Put it this way, it would be a much longer journey than going to like the Fist of the First Men in terms of just actually land. So it's a very long journey. So if John was to do that, how would that even go down? And in my opinion, it's very similar to like Gior Mormont's expedition. Any expedition in which you risk losing a large force, go north of the wall, it just doesn't make any sense in my opinion. And you even think about it from the point of view of, okay, let's say you even make it to Hardhome. how do you get them out? Because right now they're not being able to load them onto ships, getting them out of there. There's even been slavers who have taken some of these wildlings, have been trying to sell them. We see that through Arya. It's a tough situation. And the idea that, okay, you want to save all these people is great because you don't want to add them to the other's army, but just morally, it's good to save people and not let them die and suffer. But in a lot of ways, it's just doesn't seem feasible that you can save the people of Hardhome. And I don't know if we'll see it. I doubt it. I think all the people at Hardhome are doomed. I think they will all die because of Melisandre's vision. But even if you were going to do a mission like that, it's incredibly risky. Exactly what we saw on the television show. The others attack. You really don't know how to fight them. You have no information on them yet. Something I think could be really interesting is we've always tossed around the idea of the prologue being some idea of it being like Jane Westerling or this party that's heading west. They're attacked by Nymeria and her wolf pack. Well, what instead is if we get a prologue of Hardhome? I think it'd be really fitting given the title of the actual book, The Winds of Winter, being basically this kind of it'd feel like the Fist of the First Men again, but I would say even in a darker sense. So again, I don't think things are going to go well for the people of Hardhome. I think bulk majority of those people are going to die, unfortunately, but we'll have to see. So that's in transition. We then have a force that is at the Shadow Tower trying to cross it south. Once again, tough situation because they're going in a really difficult path to tread. That's what we see throughout all of the books, that this path going the west side of the wall is even tougher, right? Than even just trying to scale the wall, it would seem. I don't think that's going to go well either. I think easily they could either one, get taken over by the others again, or they could starve, not have enough food, or not be able to survive the conditions as the others are coming south. The cold is getting even more intense, stuff like that. So, yeah, again, if you are a wildling force and you're still north of the wall, you're in a tough spot. You're in a really tough spot. I think another way that we could possibly see Hardhome, because again, you have to remember, for us to see Hardhome, some POV has to go there, or we have to have it through a prologue or an epilogue. It's definitely not going to be an epilogue. That would take way too long. People of Hardhome will not survive an entire book. So I think the other option you'd have for seeing what is happening at the Shadow Tower or at Hardhome would be through Bran. Maybe Bran sees the events of what actually transpires there, and so that's how we actually get this, conclusion to what happens there. George could also always leave it a mystery. Maybe George leaves it a mystery we don't know until we find somebody that survives Hardhome. That becomes a revelation towards the end of the book, foreshadowing that the others are basically completely in control of the north of the wall now, and then maybe the wall comes down. So there's a lot there. There's a lot there for George to explore, and it all kind of works in how is the timing of things going to happen? Is Hardhome something that's going to need to happen very first third of the book? Will we see that, before Bran starts heading south? Will that happen while he's heading south? A lot of things to really think about there. So I think that kind of gets us done with the things north of the wall in terms of A Dance with the Dragons, where we are at Winds of Winter right now. Let's kind of transition to more of the wildlings we actually know. The wildlings we know are the ones that are south of the wall. The ones with Val when she came and they passed through the wall the first time, then also the wildlings that came the second time. So let me hit some chats before we kind of transition as well. Does the crack symbolize that the wall will fall or that it must fall? I think it probably that it will fall because I don't think it must fall. If it was to must fall, it would lead to just foreign conflict. I don't know. That's an interesting question though. Like, what is the purpose of the wall outside of keeping out the others, maybe, or keeping people from going into the land of the others? Yeah, but like PK, my issue is Val and Jon actually have chemistry. Like, there's been that established between the two that they can flirt really well, and Jon does find her really attractive. And there's even the contemplation that Jon would have married Val and he would have become the Lord of Winterfell. There's none of that with Daenerys. Like there's just no build up to it whatsoever right now. So like, yeah, you can speculate that the two will get together, and I speculate that it's very possible they will, but there's no evidence to support it. Like, there's not really been much to suggest that. Like, and you're talking about the idea of like ice and fire. Well, that could just mean the two teaming up, not necessarily that they are, getting together. Uh, I know people think Stannis should be the epilogue POV, but if we're ever gonna get insight into the mystery of Hardhome, it's gonna appear on screen. Yeah, Joe, like if we get what happens at Hardhome, it has to be through either the prologue, the epilogue, or probably through Bran. Maybe Melisandre. Maybe Melisandre gives us an actual in-depth look of what happened instead of kind of the vague stuff we get. The Targs getting the throne again would make Robert's rebellion feel empty. The resolution of the story has to bring in a new age, just like Aegon's conquest brings in a new age. Yeah, again, crap. I think that the story, if it just goes back to, oh, the Targaryens are on the throne and we continue from there, it doesn't feel like the story had meaning, right? The story from Fire and Blood all the way to the end of the series because we just backtrack. We're now with the Targaryens back on the throne, and especially if the dragons are still alive, you're going to have the dragons, and this could lead to another dance. And there has to be some change to the governmental system, likely how it operates exactly, or something like that, or a new way in which we, I don't know, look at it. There won't be a strong new resolution. Magic will be gone from the world, and the seasons corrected. But the people in power will still be forces of evil. I like that, Joe. The setup looks fire grease. You look like a news YouTuber. Well, I've heard that a lot, but thank you. What? Hear me out. What if the wall falls when Stannis burns Shireen to resurrect Jon? Issue with that's going to take a long time, likely, for Stannis to burn Shireen. Like talked about this all in the last stream a lot. Is that when you get to the point of Stannis burning Shireen, when is that going to happen? Right? Because Stannis right now is in the Battle of Ice, or at least the preparation in Winds of Winter. And how's that all going to go down? And then what is the fallout of that going to be? For Stannis to burn Shireen, he has to make the decision almost right away that after the Battle of Ice, he can't take Winterfell, or at least he can't right now. So he needs to go back to the wall to get Shireen, or he has to send for her, which makes no sense to me. So he's going to have to go back to the wall to burn her. That journey is going to take quite a long time, right? Remember, again, I know the weather was a really big factor in this, but it basically took Stannis over half of a Dance with Dragons to get to Winterfell in general. So I just don't know when that would occur, right? In terms of, okay, is Jon going to be dead almost the entire book? That doesn't seem likely to me. It seems like Jon's resurrection will be something that's handled within the first third to the first half of Winds of Winter. I just don't know. Like me, it's a really cool idea, PK. I love the thought behind the idea, but it just doesn't seem like it can happen in execution. The only problem is you're not talking at the camera much, or you're not looking at the camera much when you're talking. So it's much harder to do while live streaming a Xeno because my chat I'm reading is down here. So yeah, I'm working on it because this is a very new like setup for me, but it's something that in videos I know I don't have this problem really, but in streams it's much harder because chat's down here. It's not there. So when I'm working on it though. Targaryens getting the throne makes no sense. I agree. I agree, Mass. I think that the wall is an interesting concept given that it separates the wildlings, and that's really what I think a lot of a Storm of Swords is about for wildlings and Jon's arc is what's so different between the wildlings and the people south of the wall that they should be divided. I think that's a really interesting idea. So, Joe, this is my thing though. I don't think that they got that from. I think D&D were really struggling on how do we bring the wall down. Horn of Winter was not a thing in the show. So how do they bring it down? Well, you have dragons. So I guess maybe the dragons could bring down the wall. And so they did this very convoluted plot. That's what season 7 is all about. Season 7 has two purposes. First purpose is the others need to be coming through the wall by the end of it. Kind of the same thing as Winds of Winter. Others have to start their conquest of Westeros at the end of Winds of Winter for the story to actually be able to conclude within A Dream of Spring. That's one thing. Second thing is, how does Daenerys get nerfed down to the point where there's actually a war? Because at the start of season 7, she has all the dragons, she has 4 armies in Cersei. How do we equalize that out? And so, unfortunately, D&D were like, okay, we need to get rid of a dragon. How do we get rid of a dragon? Well, we make this whole party go north of the wall, and then this really convoluted way, and Daenerys loses a dragon. So on one hand, we get rid of a dragon for Daenerys. It kind of nerfs her a little bit. But two, it gives us a way that the Night King and the others can get through the wall. I don't think that was something that was for the books. And even if it is for the books, that a dragon is what brings down the wall, how is that going to work? Right? Because the wall or the others need to at least be starting their conquering of Westeros. How's it even going to happen? Daenerys likely won't even be in Westeros by the end of the book. Or if she is, it's going to be like her just getting to Dragonstone. Does maybe Dragonbinder bind a dragon to Euron? Then Euron maybe takes that dragon and brings down the wall. I just think it would make more sense if the Horn of Winter was with Sam, have Euron blow that, and then you have your apocalypse type thing happening. Stannis will take Winterfell. Starks will all come, and Stannis will slowly be replaced, and his support will fade. Then he goes to the wall to kill Shireen for advantage, but it actually revives Jon. But my thing with that is PK. Think about that. Stannis taking Winterfell. So already we know probably that there's going to be at least almost 4 or 5 Stannis POV chapters like Theon or Asha with the lead up to the Battle of Ice, Then you're going to have probably a couple chapters for the Stannis POV of what they do after that for Winterfell. Then they have to take Winterfell. So that's again another chapter, maybe 2. And then you have the fallout of, okay, they've taken out the Boltons, whatever. Like you get what I'm saying? Like, there's just so many chapters that has to get to the point where Stannis then goes back to the wall, burns Shireen, that brings back Jon. That would literally take the entire, but like Jon would not get resurrected until the very end of the book. That's what you're predicting if that's what you're going with. So I just don't think that's the case. I don't think that if Jon's coming back, he's not going to just stay out of the entire book. We don't have time for Jon to stay out the entire book because there's so much more that needs to happen. If we need things like Jon's parentage to be revealed at the end of the book, if we need things like, the King of the North, the North stuff to be them isolated now, that's got to happen by the end of the book, or at least be, getting that ball rolling. That doesn't make sense if it's, okay, that's going to be a Dream of Spring plot. It's just not enough there. Like the end of the book is hard for me to think of. I feel the Seven Kingdoms will go back to the way it was before the conquest, since there's no threat to unite everyone. So I think in a way you're right. Like if you're the North, if the dragons are gone, there's no reason to be in the Seven Kingdoms, right? Nobody can take the North. It's impossible. You can't take the North. The same will apply for the Dornish, right? The Dornish, it's like bent the knee to the dragons, but the dragons aren't a thing anymore, and no army's been able to conquer Dorne. So why should we be in the Seven Kingdoms to begin with, right? So I think that you kind of come to this idea where I think a lot of maybe the Southern Kingdoms might still be under a king, but there's also others that might, go against that. They might be more isolated. Then does that prompt all these kingdoms to go back into warring against each other, like what was happening before the conquest? It's a really tough idea, Zeno. So the problem we've have here is that George has kind of confirmed that Stannis is going to burn his daughter, and so I've put up the theory, Lulu, that Stannis is not willingly going to burn his daughter, but it's more the fact that Melisandre tricks him to do so. So it's still Stannis burning his daughter, but it's not Stannis knowing he's burning his daughter. It's maybe Mel using a glamour or using trickery, things that she's already known to be doing against him. That's what maybe gets Stannis to do. Uh, in the books, Yarm will get dragon at beginning of winds during the Battle of Fire. That's interesting. I personally don't think that. I think he's going to get the Krakens. I think that he's going to do a massive blood sacrifice, and that will help him take down the Hightower fleet, or maybe the Red Wine fleet, whichever part George saves it for. But I personally don't know. I don't really love the idea of Euron getting a dragon because I think that giving him all the magical stuff just kind of feels a little much to me. But I don't think that's a bad idea at all, PK. That's another part of it, Cannibal. Like, we're gonna see Davos's plot line too. And that's the problem. There's just so many plot lines that have so many different like things that need to happen, and the North is not exempt to that whatsoever. Also, guys, while we're kind of in answering some questions, comments, hope everybody stays safe. I know in my area we have a very severe storm. Like it's gonna be happening, I think tonight. Um, I think there's gonna be a chance of like tornadoes and stuff. So if you're living, especially like in the area where this storm is hitting, everybody be safe and all that. Meanwhile, I'm planning to go to my friend's house tonight for D&D, so that's probably not a smart idea, but we'll see. Daenerys needs the most chapters in both of the next books. Not even a Dany fan moment, but I feel no, I agree, PK. Like I've said this. I think that Winds of Winter will be Daenerys's. I would probably argue her most dominant book of the entire series. It just has to be. He has way too much that has to go on, way too much that needs to be. And maybe okay, maybe let's take a step back. Maybe Daenerys does not have the most chapters that she has throughout the series, but I think her plot line will. So, like, what do I mean by her plot line? Daenerys, Barristan, Tyrion, Victarion, those characters. I think that culmination of characters will have the most chapters of any of the other plot lines in the book, including the North. So, I don't think that's a bad idea at all, PK. The only thing that would speed up Stannis burning Shireen would be if Justin Massey got to the wall, saw the destruction from the mutiny. Shireen died in the proceed, and he brought her body back. I didn't think about Justin Massey. So what if Justin Massey, he hears that Stannis is dead, right? Even though, and Stannis said that he might hear that. So I don't know. That's a tough one. I think that's a whole nother video that we could talk about would be Justin Massey's like adventure, but I kind of want to get back to where we are. I'll get through comments, but we'll talk about the end of the stream, maybe. Oh God, what if what if Euron puts a finger in his bum and turns into a giant kraken? Mayhaps. I also think he will do the blood sacrifice for the Kraken, but with the Dragonbinder horn, it would be anticlimactic for it to just. I don't think it's going to do nothing, PK, but I don't necessarily think it's going to give Euron a dragon. That's what I'm saying, PK. I think that Dragonbinder will still be used, and I think it's a really difficult thing to figure out, but I don't necessarily think it's going to give Euron a dragon. But yeah, I agree, PK. I think that the Dragonbinder will have some purpose, but I don't think its purpose will be that Euron gets a dragon. That would be my conclusion. More or less. So let's kind of then turn our attention to the wildlings that are south of the wall. So the wildlings south of the wall are by far the safest. Now, are they in a good position? No. We already know that they were planning to go to Winterfell with Jon, take out Ramsay and the Boltons. That's going to put them in harm's way. They also do not have a sizable force comparatively to the Boltons. They're not trained as well. That's not a great idea for them as a population, but they also have to. If they don't take out the Boltons will not let them live south of the wall. They'll be wiped off the planet and probably eliminating the last wildlings. So they're kind of in a tough spot where, yes, they've gained passage south of the wall, but now they're fighting for their rights. They're fighting for the right to stay in Westeros and to live as a society. Well, I believe Stannis will take care of Roose and Ramsay by the time the wildlings even get there. So I actually do think a lot of the wildlings are safe for now in terms of the battle with the Boltons. I don't think that they'll play a huge role in that. Fortunately, the role I think they will play, which will be against the others, is not going to lead them to a great time. Also, we have to think about another faction, which is Sigorn and he marrying Alice Karstark. That's an interesting point because when you get to the end of the series, will Sigorn basically stay as like Lord Karstark? Like, will he more or less be in charge of the Karstarks? Well, him and Alice. How does that go down? Does he live long enough to even find out? Tough point of it, right? Karstark lands are very much in the path of the others. Will there be Karstark lands come back to begin with? Really tough situation, right? I don't know. And then you also have again Val. What is her role going to be going into the I think in my opinion, so I think Tormund is going to die in the series. I've kind of thought about this more and more. I think Tormund will die in the battle with the others. I think the person that actually will be leading the Wildlings will be Jon and Val. I do think the end game, whether it's romantic, whether it's not romantic, and maybe George leaves it open ended for that purpose, is I do actually think Jon going back up north, past the wall, and kind of living with the Wildlings makes a lot of sense. I also could see George doing a situation in which he keeps it open, but because of the like chemistry between Val and Jon, there's a possibility that in the future Jon gets with Val, but at the time it's just both of them leading the wildlings, the remaining wildlings north of the wall. I think that makes a lot of sense just in general. I think the wildlings also be willing to support Val, given what done for them. She's the one that brings Tormund back to the wall and has the trust of Jon. I think that that makes a lot of sense for the future of the wildlings. I don't think the wildlings have any way that they're going to live south of the wall or where the wall currently stands. But we'll see. And I also almost don't even think like I saw Maz just comment this, so I want to kind of address this as well. The wildling ending that the show gave, it seemed like a happy ending for the show. In the book, it's not necessarily a happy ending. Like Jon maybe gets what he wanted to live free and to not have to worry about being a bastard and all this stuff. But Jon, by the end of the story, will be a deeply hurt man. He's a man that's, if again, this is if let's go off the idea that Jon and Daenerys do get together. Likely Daenerys is going to die. And maybe Jon has some role in that. Who knows? But Jon would have lost Ygritte. He would have lost a lot of his family. He would have lost a lot of trust and betrayal because of his betrayal and people with his death in book 5, contemplating what comes after death. His own like being, who he is as a person, he will be, I think, a tragic character. I think he will almost be a character like how George maybe would have saw veterans coming back from Vietnam War and how they treated or how they themselves dealt with going through war. That's the ending I see for Jon. I think that Jon is a character that, on the surface level, you look at it and go, okay, he has a fairly happy ending. He gets to walk away from the conflict, going with people that he probably wanted to go with anyway. The thing that's he's battling in his head for books now, but it's a lot deeper than that. It's not really a happy ending for him. Quite a, like George says, a bittersweet ending for the character. So, William, I did a research on this for a video in the past, and I was always under the illusion that what you just said is what was correct. Is that okay? Green's gonna burn, but we don't know how or why. That's what I always thought. Go back to the earliest videos on my channel about Stannis. That was my thought. I then went back and looked at this, what you're talking about. Your exact question is what I was researching. And from a number of sources, George R. R. Martin indicates that one of the plot points that he told D&D was that Stannis burns. I'll try to look it up on my laptop and provide a source for you guys, but my laptop's very slow, so I doubt it's gonna happen. Like my laptop just to load like the stream page, um, took like 10 minutes. So we'll see. This is a Google Chromebook, so you guys should, and it's an old Google Chromebook at that. So, uh, let me see if I can get a link for you guys, just so you guys have some reference and all that. So while that's loading, that's kind of where I think the Wildlings will go. I think that they will fight for Jon. I think they'll fight against the others. I think that their numbers will dwindle heavily. I think, the Wildlings, this great force or people, I would say more of a people coming to the wall in book 3. And by the end of it, I think they'll be basically a small clan of people. I don't think there'll be a large group. I think bulk majority of the Wildlings will be killed off. So, let me see if I can find the exact quote for you guys. This article comes from Vanity Fair. I don't know how, well, what's the wording? How reputable they are, but we'll see. We'll see what they got to say on this. If it loads. If it loads in reasonable amount of time. Oh, it actually did. All right. I'm just reading through this real quick, guys, to make sure this is actually what I'm looking for. I don't think this is what I'm looking for. They're not actually quoting George, but I guess you guys are just gonna have to trust me. I'll have to look at this later. Maybe I'll provide a source for you guys later. I don't know. But that's what my research came to. My research came to that George specifically says that Stannis is going to burn Shireen. Let me go back to chat, see what you guys are saying, and then we might end out stream because I still got to record today. I got to record Theon 2 of Clash of Kings. Not my favorite chapter of Clash of Kings. Quite a weird chapter because it's Theon hitting on his sister for like a good bulk majority of it, and it's also really long. I don't know what George was on, but when he put Catelyn a 2 with Jon 3 and Theon 2 back to back, they are 3 of the longest chapters of the series so far. So, most chapters in wins: Tyrion, Dany, Cersei, and Asha. I think I agree with that. I think I agree with that, Joe. Thoughts of Val as a corpse queen? Absolutely not. George would never with Val. He cannot do that. I don't think so, but it'd be interesting though. I also don't buy into George's plot points from 10 plus years ago. Although thematically, Stannis burning Shireen will end up making sense. It's absolutely open for change. Yeah, Joe, this is something that I agree with. I think that Stannis burning Shireen is kind of George writing himself into a hole because it's like I've talked about. If Shireen's burning is linked to what brings Jon back, which as of right now makes a ton of sense, it just doesn't add up. The timings of events don't make sense. Oh, did I say Shireen burns Stannis? My bad. It just doesn't make any sense right now. So for that to work, what ends up having to happen is you have to make a decision. A couple of decisions, actually. But one, how long is Jon going to be dead for? And George is going to have to make that decision for himself. Does he plan it to be the first third of the book, first half of the book, first 3/4 of the book, the very end of the book? Okay, that's your first decision. Your second decision is, what is Shireen's influence in that? Is Shireen the reason Jon comes back? totally unrelated. His screen's going to only be used for like a grayscale plague or to affect Stannis's psychology or his plot line. Okay. Third thing, does Stannis, after the Battle of Ice, because I think most people believe he's going to win, does he take Winterfell? Does he not take Winterfell? Does he go back to the Wall? You have to like rearrange these things to craft the narrative almost around the idea that Stannis burned Shireen and not the other way around. And I don't think that's a good way of writing. So I very easily could see George going away from that idea because it's hard to implement in a way that is executed well. And I think I think we're going to see this. I talk about this on every Winds of Winter sample chapter. A lot of them are going to be changed because they were written so long ago. Things could easily be changed. The way he thought about the series could be different. Arya's Winds of Winter sample chapter, in my opinion, is the biggest offender of this. First sample chapter doesn't really seem to make all that amount of sense with the Arya character that we have. And also the idea that it seems like it was a chapter that was made for a 5-year time skip. Like, I think Arya's Percy chapter will be very different in the Winds of Winter than it is right now, how it currently. So I think I agree with a lot of you guys that it'll probably be different. Sources, trust me, bro. Exactly. Just trust me. I tell you the Maesters are bad guys and trying to take down all the Targaryens and the dragons. Just listen to me. Theon Targaryen? Absolutely not. No more hidden Targaryens. Yes, we're wearing the tank top. I will say it is really nice out right now. It's like, I think almost 80 degrees where I live. I'm going to take a walk after the stream. Gonna maybe eat some nice spaghetti, come back down, get a quick rereading recording, and all that. Might have to charge the camera. I don't know how fast it's going down because I didn't charge it last night, but we'll see. Arya's chapter is definitely changing. George wrote it when he wrote A Feast for Crows. So yeah, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Arya is like a really young girl, and there's just some things that happen in that chapter that just don't add up with Arya's age. So yeah. Acer's evil? I agree. So I think that's where we're going to end out the stream. I know we didn't really hit an hour, but I didn't plan for this stream to be all that long just because I didn't expect a good amount of people to be in here. And because it's the middle of the day, of course, on a Friday. And also, I just got a lot of stuff to do today. So I hope you guys all enjoyed the stream. I'm probably going to repurpose parts of this stream into a video for next week. So I hope you guys all enjoyed the little stream. I'm glad the stream seemed to be working better for you guys. Like, nobody said anything throughout the whole thing, and I didn't see anything on my end. So hope everybody was good. We might also have a Reyna Part 2 stream this weekend. It just depends on how quickly I'm able to get through editing stuff this week. But yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.